Hi there, this is Josh from Literary Gladiators, and today I'm here to wrap up my 2017 reading by announcing my 10 favorite books that I read this year. As always, I'm going to be counting down, starting from number 10 and going down to my absolute favorite book that I read this year. Overall, I would say that this was a very nice reading year. I didn't read as much as I did the last 2 years, but I think that the material that I read and the short works, the poems, and some of the rereads that I engaged were just spectacular experiences. And my rule of thumb for ranking rereads is that if it has yet to make a top 10, then it would be eligible for this year. If it has already made a top 10, then I'm not going to rank it. Let's get right into it. Number 10 on my list is a book that was released this year, and it fulfills my collection of presidential biographies, and that is Washington's Farewell, The Founding Fathers' Warning to Future Generations by John Avlon. And Washington's Farewell has to do with George Washington's farewell address that he wrote in 1796 and released upon his announcement that he would step down as president after 2 terms. What I liked most about this book is the area of concentration and how, while we got a background of George Washington's life, the focus remained on the farewell address. History was weaved within this central topic, and I think that Avlon really knew what he was talking about. Number 9 on my list is a book that I read for the Literary Gladiators discussion, and also something that caught my attention because while we all know that Donald Trump is not an avid reader, his Secretary of Defense, General James Mattis, is not only an avid reader, and not only does he have a collection of over 7,000 books, but when he was general, he had assigned reading for his incoming privates that served under him in the military. And one of them is A Bell for Adano by John Hersey, which takes the number 9 spot on my list. And also, I was also looking to get into John Hersey's works. A Bell for Adano is a war story, but it explores an element that goes way beyond war being about fighting and killing. It has to do with the idea that when one country invades another, the country that is invading needs to now govern the people in the way that they find fit. What I thought was amazing about this book, and why it makes the top 10, is because not only does this book do an outstanding job in conveying the role of the military officer and what they really are required to do, but it also explores the church and the honest depiction of those that hold higher positions and how they tend to become disconnected and a bit inept, specifically that of General Marvin and his form of disconnection with how Major Giappolo engaged in his actions. But our discussion of A Bell for Adano is going to be up in March, and I'm really looking forward to its release. Number 8 on my list is Salem's Lot by Stephen King. Stephen King has made his way back to my top 10 list for the first time since 2014, which that was when I only had a top 5, but The Shining did make its way there. Salem's Lot is something that I read back in 8th grade, but I wanted to reread in order to develop a clearer sense of the book, and I think that reading it now was certainly a much... I got so much more out of it reading it now, because I felt that I had a greater understanding and a greater enthusiasm for the text. I read this as a buddy read with Jessie, who also put this on her top 10 list. She had it at number 6. I have it at number 8. But what I like about this book is that Stephen King does an outstanding job telling a vampire story, but in such a fresh and original way that we know is heavily inspired by Dracula. Specifically, the Nosferatu style. But he adds his sense to it, his main attributes, the main setting, a protagonist who's a writer, and Ben Mears is a really... he's a strong character with a great deal of depth, and as much as he has his obvious flaws, he's somebody that is easy to root for, and I think that King does an outstanding job developing all of the characters, even Charlie the bus driver, and Dud Rogers the dump attendant. And then you have Father Callahan as the representative of the church. I think that this is where Stephen King really established himself, is through Salem's Lot. It's an unpopular opinion for those that really enjoyed Carrie, but I think Salem's Lot really is a masterpiece of vampire fiction in the 20th century. Number 7 on my list is another book that I read for the Literary Gladiators discussions, and that is Fences by August Wilson. Our discussion is going to be released in February, but this is a play that follows Troy Maxon and his family. And what I thought was brilliant about Fences is the fact that not only does it display a great depiction of the black struggles of this point in time, but it also does an excellent job conveying struggles that anybody can relate to, and especially during this period of time. And I really got a great sense of feeling as if I was in that moment and watching the play live. And I really would be convinced to watch this play live. I feel that this was just so brilliantly weaved together, and the characters were developed so well. I think that they were all perfectly human with their many struggles, but this really got me into wanting to pick up more plays of this nature. I wasn't able to do so, but I think that this would definitely convince me to read more plays and read more August Wilson. Those 4 books I rated 4 stars. Now we're going to move on to the 3 that I rated 4.5 stars. And number 6 on my list is Poems of Religion and Society by John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams was such a brilliant, well-rounded man. He was the 6th President of the United States. He served from 1825 to 1829. His father, John Adams, was our 2nd President. But he was also a planter, and he loved literature. And he himself enjoyed writing poetry. This is not only a great piece of history, and this is a must for anybody that wants to explore the great depths of the U.S. presidents, but John Quincy Adams did quite a good job writing poetry. He did a great job with rhyme scheme. He did a great job capturing what it was that he was talking about, whether it be a political discussion, particular images, or responses to biblical texts and events. But he also had a great deal of wit, which that always makes poetry fun. And John Quincy Adams' poetry is definitely something that was worth looking into. Number 5 on my list is The Chosen by Chaim Potok. And this is a book that I read to kick off Jewish January, which I was looking to get into Chaim Potok for quite some time, and I'm really happy that I did, because I feel that in this book I got a greater understanding of Judaism, particularly Orthodox and Hasidic Judaism. It's just such a really powerful, gripping story that also has a great sense of real-life experiences, real-life events, and that necessary sense of humor. Number 4 on my list is What Dreams May Come by Richard Matheson. I see Richard Matheson as a master in speculative fiction. I highly admire what he writes and the approach that he takes, and I think that this does no different. I read The Shrinking Man in 2012, and it ranked 5th on my top 10 list. And last year I read I Am Legend, and it made number 9 on the top 10 list. What Dreams May Come ranks at number 4 this year. This is quite a it's quite a heartfelt book that captures a man's love for his wife, but I think that this book's greatest feat is how it provides such a great argument on the topic of life after death. And it really just amazed me how the arguments that are presented on this subject, they sound so believable, and I feel that Richard Matheson did such a great job in researching the topic. He has 6 pages of sources as to where he got his information from, but this book is just brilliant. I think that the first thirds of the book were much better than the last part, but I still think that the argument is extraordinary, and the story is pretty gripping as well. I'm looking forward to discussing this, which I'm planning to do so for Season 7. The top 3 books on my list all received a perfect 5 stars, and at number 3 is Surviving the Angel of Death, the true story of a Mengele twin in Auschwitz, which is by Ava Moses Kor and Lisa Rojani Buccieri. And this has to do with Kor and her twin sister's account of living through the Holocaust and having to endure Dr. Mengele's brutal experiments. But through this piece, Kaur, beyond talking about her experiences, talks about her decision to forgive Dr. Mengele and those that caused her pain during this tragic period in time, and why she feels that forgiveness is the greatest way to move on from such terrible instances like this. What I thought was powerful about this piece is just the idea that it was so accessible, but at the same time it didn't take away from the honesty that came with the Holocaust and its tragedies. Number 2 on my list is a book that I do not have because I borrowed it from someone, but I read it in one sitting, and it had such a great impact. I think at this moment, it's the best comic that I've read thus far, and that is Batman the Killing Joke by Alan Moore. This is what we see as being the most likely story of how the Joker became the Joker. Because the Joker's given so many wild, off-the-beaten-path stories. But I think that it is just brilliant. This does a great job profiling the Joker as, I would argue, the most impactful villain in the Batman universe. I think that this book really does the Joker justice in his attitude, but it also gives us such a poignant story of how the Joker tried to make something of himself, and following tragedy and being screwed over, it led to one bad day turning into a complete and utter disaster for the Joker and, in many cases, Gotham. I think that it is definitely key if you want to understand the whole Batman series and specifically the Joker himself. Number 1 on my list is a book that really had an impact on me. I think that I learned a lot more about the subject matter, and after I finished reading it, I was thinking so much about the topic at hand and how I can go about learning more on this topic. And the book that takes the number 1 spot on my list is He Wanted the Moon. The madness and medical genius of Dr. Perry Baird and his daughter's quest to know him, by Mimi Baird, who is his daughter, with the help of Eve Claxton. This book is so much more than his life and times. It also has to do with his great impact that was never, that was overshadowed or forgotten. And I think that the quest in itself was just a very heart-wrenching and powerful experience to follow along with and read. This book is split into 2 parts. The first part is Dr. Baird's very own account of going into an institution, being in an institution, and escaping the institution. And then the second part is Mimi's growing up, her life without her dad. It was just her mother, her sister, and later on her mother remarried. Her one experience with her dad, and then the things that she learns throughout her life, and the great impact that her dad tried to make on manic depression. I feel that while Dr. Baird was forgotten in history, I feel that his efforts and his pioneering of manic depression research should pick up a sense of global recognition. And I feel that I think that reading this really gave me a greater understanding of someone with the condition. It gave me a greater understanding of the patience and empathy that comes with interacting with people that have manic depression or bipolar disorder. And I feel that this really changed my way of seeing things and seeing other mental conditions. And while one can say that Dr. Baird wasn't the holiest person, he was certainly somebody that did his best to make a better life for himself and for other people that had to or may have to endure his condition. And it's also just quite it's quite remarkable, the fact that it's only been these past few decades where we've been seeing a great deal of progress as far as research on mental disabilities and conditions go. There was a discussion about the fact that this would be adapted into a film where Brad Pitt would star in the leading role of Dr. Perry Baird, and Tony Kushner was going to direct. There hasn't been discussion about it as of late, but I sure hope that it is adapted, because I think that people really need to check out this book. And even without the idea of a film adaptation, I feel that people need to check out this book. I think that it will change the way that people see others, and I think that it will help them develop a greater sense of patience and empathy. And the most crucial part is that this is something that has really happened. Dr. Perry Baird really did his best to make an impact and pioneer the efforts of research on manic depression. Already, here's a pile of 9 of the 10 best books that I read. And I think that this really captures and wraps up such a great reading year. I hope you check out some more videos from our channel. I hope that everybody has a very happy, healthy, and safe new year. 2018 is going to be a big year for our channel. We have a lot more in store, a lot more discussions, a lot more hauls, a lot more reviews, a lot more foodie book tags. And I really hope that you guys check out the videos from our channel. And I'm going to keep an eye out for everyone else's best books that they read in 2017 as well. Thank you for watching this video, and for now, and as always, I encourage you to keep reading.